Hello friends, I am Nisha Sharma, Associate Professor, Department of English. The topic under discussion today is a character portrayal of Torvald Helmer in Henrik Ibsen's play A Doll's House. Torvald Helmer, one of the main characters in the story, is Nora Helmer's husband, who is the protagonist of the play. He may be described as one of the antagonists of the story and plays the role of a controlling, dominating man in Nora's life. Nora's husband of 8 years, Torvald Hammer, at the beginning of the play, has been promoted to manager of the bank. Torvald has built his middle class living through his own work and not from family money. Focused on business, Torvald spends a great deal of his time at home in his study, avoiding general visitors and interacting very little with his children. In fact, he sees himself primarily as responsible for the financial welfare of his family and a guardian for his wife. Torvald is particularly concerned with morality. He also can come across as stiff and unsympathetic. Still, the last act of the play makes very clear that he dearly loves his wife. He routinely spoils Nora and claims to be in love with her, but he talks too down to her and treats her like a doll. He calls her names like lark, little squirrel, implying that he considers Nora endearing but not an equal. He was never told exactly how Nora came up with the money for his medical trip to Italy. If he knew, his pride would suffer. Thus, we can see Hammer as a dominating husband. Torval is introduced to the audience as rather a condescending man who sees himself as superior to Nora intellectually, emotionally, and morally. He calls her with affectionate terms like little featherbrain, little squirrel, little skylark. The repetitive use of the word little to describe Nora shows that he sees her more as a child than a wife or an equal. He greatly enjoys his position as a protector, a guide, and an instructor to Nora and likes to be completely in control of her. And this is seen in his eagerness to teach Nora the Tarantella dance. Torvald seems to be in charge of every aspect of life and makes decisions with respect to what she should eat, how she should walk, and the like. He sees his wife Nora as an object of his desire, a property that he has his complete right over. He envisions himself as a savior to Nora and says to her, I've often wished that you could be threatened by some imminent danger so that I could risk everything I had, even my life itself, to save you. Thus, we can say Torvald has an exalted sense of self. Another important characteristic of Torvald's character is his exalted sense of self. He sees himself as an idealistic, morally upright individual whose morals are unquestionable. He dictates the same morals to his wife and also to his friends. A songbird must have a clear voice to sing with no false notes. He is extremely conscious of his position in the society and seems to have a great need for social acceptance and approval. He is seen telling Nora, there's something constrained, something ugly, even about a home that's founded on borrowing and debt. He is also a blatant hypocrite and jumps to conclusion about people's characters. Throughout the play, he keeps reassuring Nora that he will protect her and be a savior to her, that he is a man enough to take it. But when he learns about her deception, he chides her for it, calling her a liar, a hypocrite, and a criminal. He is quick to judge people, as is seen from his judgment of Crockster. An atmosphere of lies like that infects and poisons the whole life of a home. He also immediately blames Nora's deceit on her father's character and remarks that he cannot allow her to bring up the children. I shouldn't dare trust you with them. Thus, we can see the masculine pride in Torvald. He has an inflated sense of masculine pride in himself and is portrayed as a chauvinist who believes that a woman must ideally be restricted to her house. His behavior towards Nora shows that he sees her more as a decorative item meant to beautify the house than his wife. He demeans his wives and blames her mistakes on her gender. Nora, Nora just like a woman. When he claims to forgive Nora for her deception, he remarks, I shouldn't be a proper man if your feminine helplessness didn't make you twice as attractive to me. To Torvald, Nora's feelings, her thoughts, and opinions do not really matter. He has a strong sense of entitlement and assumes that Nora must conform to whatever he says or do as he pleases simply because he is her husband. He believes that a woman's most sacred duties are her duties towards her husband and her children. He also believes that he is entitled to openly express his opinion on what a woman can or cannot do. Thus, we find Hammer as selfish and cruel. This is seen in his attitude when he realizes Dr. Rank is dying. Despite sharing a supposedly close bond with him, he shows little remorse at the revelation. On the other hand, he expresses a hint of relief on getting Rank out of the way. He says, well, perhaps it's all for the best for him at any rate, and maybe for us too, Nora. Now that you and I have no one but each other. Torvald is highly egoistic, and all his actions and words revolve around himself. When the truth about Nora's crime is finally revealed, his immediate fear is of losing his self reputation. However, as soon as they receive Crockstadt's letter of apology, his attitude completely changes as he is no longer under risk. He then remarks, there's something indescribably sweet and satisfying for a man to know deep down that he has forgiven his wife, completely forgiven her with all his heart. Again, displaying the same self conceited attitude. Thus, we can say that he has obsession with appearances. He values appearances and formality in society. The reason he fires Krogstad has less to do with the fact that Krogstad committed forgery and more to do with the fact that Krogstad did not address him with the appropriate respect and formality. After Torvald reads Krogstad's letter detailing Nora's crime, he becomes enraged at his wife for committing an act that could damage his own reputation despite the fact that her goal was to save his life. Nora eventually leaves him. He emphasizes how inappropriate it is for a woman to abandon her husband and children. Overall, he has a superficial view of the world and seems unable to deal with the unpleasantness of life. Some portion of Torvald's need to maintain appearances likely stems from the same place as Krogstad's desperation to keep his job. Torvald knows that without a good reputation, his ability to provide for his family will be compromised. However, his obsession with appearances also seems rooted in vanity. Torvald enjoys having Nora perform at parties because other people are impressed by her. He views her beauty and her dancing ability as a reflection of his own status as a husband. He also states that he likes having Dr. Rank around because Dr. Rank's gloominess makes Torvald and Nora's life seem much happier. For Torvald, the appearance of success and happiness take precedence over genuine human connection. Dr. Rank is Torvald's best friend, but Torvald's aversion to ugliness is so strong that Dr. Rank declines to tell him about his impending death. Similarly, Torvald's doll wife and doll children are fun to show off, but when it comes to actually caring for Ivor, Bob, and Emmy, the house transforms into a scene only bearable by a mother. Torvald embraces the belief that a man's role in marriage is to protect and guide his wife. He clearly enjoys the idea that Nora needs his guidance and he interacts with her as a father would. He instructs her with trite, moralistic sayings such as a home that depends on loan and debt is not beautiful because it is not free. He is also eager to teach Nora the dance she performs at the costume party. Torvald likes to envision himself as Nora's savior, asking her after the party, do you know that I have often wished you were facing some terrible danger so that I could risk life and limb, risk everything for your sake? Torvald is very conscious of other people's perceptions of him and of his standing in the community. His explanation for rejecting Nora's request that Crockstead be kept on at the office, that retaining Crockstead would make him a laughing stock before the entire staff, shows that he prioritizes his reputation over his wife's desires. Torvald further demonstrates his deep need for society's respect in his reaction to Nora's deception. Although he says that Nora has ruined his happiness and will not be allowed to raise the children, he insists that she remain in the house because his chief concern is saving the appearance of their household. Thus, he is a specimen of middle class husband. Torvald is shallow enough to be a mere foil for the character of Nora. Unfortunately, he is depicted with enough detail to appear a very plausible type of man, typical of many contemporary heads of the family. He is a well constructed social product, a proud specimen of a middle class husband. Because Nora has been so sheltered all her life, Torvald represents all the outside world she knows. Not only does he stand for the world of men and the world of business, which has no place in her housebound life, but he represents society at large, including all the community and legal ethics which do not concern her, and religious ethics in which she has had no training. Ironically, Ibsen sets up Torvald according to the same representation. For the author, Torvald stands for all the individual denying social ills against which Ibsen has dedicated all his writing. Still, Torvald inspires sympathy rather than reproach. As a victim of his narrow view of society, Torvald inspires sympathy rather than reproach. When a man mistakes, when a man mistakes appearances for value, the basic blame must be attributed to his social environment. Ibsen, however, drives home the loathsome qualities of such a character by attributing to him a personal decadence, implying that Torvald considers Nora merely an ornamental sex object. The author shows how he maintains amorous fantasies towards his wife. He dresses her as a Capri girl and encourages her to dance in order to arouse his desires. As Torvald reinforces her girlish and immature ways, Ibsen implies an incest relationship. For Nora is made to observe that she was merely transferred from her father's tutelage to that of her husband without any change in her emotional life. It is with this final touch of perversion that Ibsen makes the character of Torvald thoroughly reprehensible to the audience. Torvald's role as a Victorian husband. Torvald exhibits the qualities typical of a Victorian husband. He feels obligated to nurture, protect, and guide his wife rather than viewing Nora as his equal. Torvald treats her as a child. He expects her to be obedient to his whims and he frequently moralizes to her. He even tries to restrict Nora's behavior by banning her from simple indulgences such as buying macaroons. Since he controls the money in their relationship, Nora is almost entirely dependent on him. Rather than viewing this control as an injustice, Torvald appears to enjoy the idea of Nora's dependence. After the Stenbock's ball, he remarks that he likes to imagine Nora as his young, secret bride. He also fantasizes about rescuing Nora from some danger. We find Torvald weaker than Nora. In reality, Torvald seems to be weaker than Nora and also dependent on her. Despite his attitude towards Nora, he seems to rely on her to tend to his ego and provide emotional support. When Nora expresses her decision to leave, he first tries to blackmail her, calling her a blind, inexperienced creature and reminding her of her sacred duties towards her children and husband. But when he realizes that Nora's decision is final and unshakable, he shows evident desperation. But to lose you, Nora, no, no, I can't even imagine it. He also goes to the extent of suggesting that they could live together as brother and sister. Torvald seizes the power in his relationship with Nora and refers to her as a girl. It seems that Torvald is actually the weaker and more childlike character. Dr. Rank's explanation for not wanting Torvald to enter his sick room, Torvald is so fastidious he cannot face up to anything ugly, suggests that Dr. Rank feels Torvald must be sheltered like a child from the realities of the world. Furthermore, Torvald reveals himself to be childish petty at times. His real objection to working with Krogstad stems not from deficiency in Krogstad's moral character, but rather Krogstad's outwardly friendly and familiar behavior. Torvald's decision to fire Krogstad stems ultimately from the fact that he feels threatened and offended by Krogstad's failure to pay him the proper respect. Thus, Torvald Helmer is a dominating, egoistic, proud, judgmental, and hypocritical individual with an exaggerated sense of pride in himself. Thank you.